ApprovalMax. Hi, everyone. My name's Justin Campbell. Today, we're doing why approval processes are vital for your procurement. So um, co- it's a joint webinar between ApprovalMax and Integration King. So it's my pleasure to introduce Robert King, who's also helping present this webinar, who's the co-founder of Integration Kings. So hi, Robert. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, Justin, for inviting us along and to be a co-presenter with yourself.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for coming along. Okay, so on today's agenda, we're introducing Approval Max, of course. We're going to introduce Rob and Integration Kings, and he's going to talk about Cin7 Core, which used to be Deer Inventory. And then we're going to do a poll, and we're going to do introducing our new product, Approval Max for Cin7 Core, and go through the benefits of it. And then we'll do a live demo followed by another poll, and we'll do a Q&A, but do feel free to ask questions as we go. It's just that we're not always in a position to be able to answer questions as we're going, but we'll see how we go. All right, so a bit about Approval Max. Approval Max is the #1 tool to get your financial documents approved on time. So we actually integrate with a few different products. So today the main focus is on our integration with Cin7 Core, but we also integrate with Xero, of course, and QuickBooks Online, NetSuite, and then we also, in the product, we have integrations with Air Wallets for doing batch payments and multi-currency and things, and Dex for getting your documents auto-entered, eliminating the data entry. So really at the core of what we're about at Approval Max is providing robust financial control and fraud detection. So we sort of act as a layer above your accounting system to bring in much more robust financial controls, financial processes, segregation of duties, budget checking things, a whole range of different controls, having a process for entering new suppliers into your accounting system. So we do lots and lots of things that really help protect your business or your organization. So just some stats is that 25% of bills are approved in less than 2 hours, and 50% are approved in less than a day. So these are, of course, organizations that implement Approval Max. And you compare that where you have organizations where they need multiple people to approve things before they get paid. And the way they do that, if they don't have Approval Max, because the accounting systems just don't really have the inbuilt processes for this. So they end up using email a lot. They end up using paper processes. They shout across the room. Sometimes they send each other Slack messages or WhatsApp messages. But the problem with all of those processes is that they're slow, they're manual, and there's no audit trail behind them. So Approval Max really solves that problem, and it really removes a significant bottleneck inside organizations. So so if you're tired of waiting weeks or months to get bills and invoices approved, Approval Max provides a better way to ensure decision makers can approve costs quickly without losing track of everything. So what we've found is you can save up to 10 business days per month, cut approval times by as high as 85%, and improve your accounts payable process efficiency time by 50%, and very significantly reduce errors by up to 80%. So it's not just all about fraud. There's also just honest mistakes as well, that having a more robust approval process and financial controls can also prevent just honest mistakes as well. So the solution we provide is we completely eradicate the need to do paper and email processes and all those things. We enable efficient spending controls by having a proper authorization process for bills and purchase orders. We make the approver's life easy because they can approve anywhere. They can approve on their mobile device. They can approve in their inbox. We even have a Slack integration now, which is really cool. So we give you lots of easy ways of being able to approve those those bills and purchase orders and other financial documents that come through. And we also shield sensitive information in both Cin7 Core and in Xero. So a very important thing is that to be able to raise, say, a Cin7 purchase order using ApprovalMax for Cin7, you don't need access to Cin7 Core, and you don't need it to be an approver either. So it means that people who don't need access to the underlying inventory system, or if it's Xero, the accounting system, they don't need to be a user in that account, which protects sensitive information of the business or organization. So I'll hand over to you, Rob. Would you like to talk about Integration Kings?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So at Integration Kings, we're an Australian-based consulting business that helps small to medium businesses implement software into their business. So that could be, one piece of application layer, or like most of our clients nowadays, it will be, multiple application layers. So it could be, putting Cin7 Core in, putting in Xero, and then putting in a multitude of other applications to help them scale. In terms of our team, we're based in Australia, but we've got some team members in Brisbane, Melbourne, and overseas in the Philippines. And just recently we took out Cin7 Partner of the Year globally for the work we do in the market. So we've looked after clients in Australia and overseas. And from a lot of feedback from some larger clients, having a CEO or someone being able to approve different purchasing decisions or different decisions external to Cin7 Core is why we sort of reached out and started working with ApprovalMax around this particular requirement, because it does come up quite a bit as your business gets more larger and more sophisticated. You need the ability to bring in approval workflows for and an audit trail around it from a financial perspective, and that's something ApprovalMax is very strong in. So that's why we sort of investigated this sort of rollout in this space with ApprovalMax.
Right, excellent. So we do have a poll that we're going to pop up on your screen. Do you currently use Cin7 Core? Okay, interesting. We're getting about a 50-50. Oh, no was getting ahead. Yes. All right. How many people we got? All right. So, all right. Okay. So it looks like yes came just ahead by one person. So we've got a mix of people who are like just looking at Cin7 Core today and for the first time, and we have people who already experienced with it. So that's fantastic. All right, so let's start talking about ApprovalMax for Cin7 Core. Where does it fit in? So so in organizations or businesses that have Cin7 Core or Dear Inventory as their inventory system, they basically have two sides of their business that has an approval process. They have the inventory purchases, and all of those generally run through the inventory system. So in that case, that's Cin7 Core. And this is what we're demoing today, is how that approval process would work. So you'd raise a purchase order in Cin7 Core, and Rob's going to show that in a second. It would then go through the approval process in ApprovalMax, and I'm going to demo how to set that up. And then it gets published to Cin7 Core, and then from Cin7, because it's already been approved as a purchase order, you can then just auto approve the bill based on that it's an approved purchase order, and finally that'll get pushed through to Xero. But you'll also have a whole bunch of other costs and expenses for the business that will just run straight through your Xero file. So in that case, you can actually raise purchase order bills either in Xero or in ApprovalMax. And in the case of bills, you can raise them in either Xero, ApprovalMax, or you could enter them in, if you've got Dex, enter them in via Dex. And then you run it through the approval process in ApprovalMax. And then finally, they'd get published to Xero as a published invoice. So what you're going to end up with is you're going to have one ApprovalMax organization for your Xero file and one for your Cin7 Core. So the two will work together for the different aspects of your business. So a key benefit of ApprovalMax for Cin7 Core is that there's no extra licenses needed. So inventory products generally are based on a per user basis. So because you're able to raise the purchase orders in ApprovalMax and you can have unlimited users in ApprovalMax, that means you potentially need less licenses. You're going to have a faster and a more robust approval process than just using Cin7 Core alone. It's very easy to set up and edit workflows if needed, and I'll show you that in a second. And you can have multiple approvers and conditions and stage in ApprovalMax, which we'll all go through. And plus you get the benefit of the mobile app. So you'll be able to approve those purchase orders when you're out on the road via the mobile app or via your inbox. So it's a really nice solution. All right, and we also have inbuilt fraud detection inside ApprovalMax as well. So let's jump to a live demo. So I'll get out of here and we'll go into our demo company. So we're already in here. So the first thing I'll show you is how you go about setting up your workflow. So I'm going to the menu button and I'm going to the approval workflow. And so we've got our approval workflow for purchase orders here. So I'll click on that. And the first thing you see on the left-hand side when you go into an approval workflow in ApprovalMax is where it gets pulled from. So in this case, we pull purchase orders directly from Cin7 Core, and as long as it's draft, it'll get pulled into ApprovalMax, and I'll be listed as the requester for that. Then we can have our approval steps. So in this case, I've got it fairly simple. I'll just remove this one here, and both Rob and I are approvers in this case. So and I've got a rule in here that only one of us needs to approve it. But if I wanted to have two people to have to approve something, I could change this any of to all or to any of two. I can also go into the approval matrix and put in really specific conditions, such as if it's a certain amount, it would go to me or Rob, who the supplier is. I can bring in, and this will all sync from Cin7 Core. So I'll bring in my suppliers in here. I can also create approval rules based on the inventory account, and I can bring that in from. This is all brought in from Cin7, or what the product is, or location. So as you can see, it's not a superficial integration. It's actually a very deep integration, and you can do an awful lot with it. And you can also add in multiple rules, and you can copy rules between users as well. So what we might want to do is we might want to let's say they're happy for me to approve above a certain amount, but like if it's above if it's above 50,000, then Rob needs to approve it before it goes through. So you can have this sort of hierarchy in here as well. We also have a step for auto approvals as well. So if we go in and add an auto approval step, if there's some things you just want to go through and be auto approved, you can go in here and set up rules for that as well. So I don't want to do that though. So I'm going to go update, confirm, and I don't want to reset my existing workflows. So what I'll do now is that's all in place. I'm going to switch to Rob, who's going to go and create a purchase order for us. So I'll stop sharing my screen. Rob, you're welcome to share yours.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. And just while we're transitioning across to my screen, probably a good point to sort of highlight with what Justin just showed us is the benefit of being able to, you know, set up those location breakdowns or product breakdowns. So in a client's business case like we will deal with, you could say, hey, these products need to be approved by this person. And in having the mobile phone, if that, you know, let's say you had $100,000 inventory purchase for cash flow that needed to be bought, and it's a big cash flow decision, and you really needed the CEO's attention, if they're an approver and the mobile phone app, they'll get push notifications about that straight away. So you can get that approval turned around and get the stock replenished pretty quickly, which is a pain point for some clients. So to start this process, like Justin said, we start with a simple purchase order. So, and depending on the information we put in, it drives the rules in ApprovalMax. So we're just going to pick a supplier at random. We would normally say stock first. We'd come down and say, you know, obviously the date, you know, when we require it by, and then we'd add the products we want to buy, and I'm just picking at random. So we're just going to say, look, we want one of that. These, one of these, and hopefully if you've got the price table stored from your supplier, you've got the pricing stored in the system, then you would just, as the workflow says, we'd click save on this. So once you've got enough information, obviously you build out your purchase order with, you know, the required information based on your standard operating procedure, that what acceptable in your business practice. You would basically then save that into the system. And now once that's saved, it can be synced over to ApprovalMax for pushing through the approval workflow. Obviously, we've set a pretty low dollar value on this, so if you wanted to automate it, it may skip. So that's where, you know, coming down to fine tuning those rules that Justin showed us is, you know, pretty critical as well. I'll flick it back to yourself now, Justin.
Yes. I'm just syncing it now. So excellent. I will reshare my screen. Okay. All right. So I believe this is the one that was just created. So yeah, as you can see, all the details have come through for approval. So I'm wearing my approver hat on now, and I can either reject or approve it. It's under that 50,000 threshold, so it only needs the one level of approval. I can leave comments in here as well. There's a whole audit trail down the bottom. And I can also attach documents as well. So there's a whole thing here where you can ask questions about things, and you can also reassign. So let's say for that particular one, it actually really is better with someone else. You could just go in here and reassign to someone different in the process and leave a comment about that. But look, I'm happy with this, and I'm going to approve it. And so that has now been approved. And so I might and I'll just open it now in I'll go to my approved, and I'll now open it in Cin7. So there is a link here that you can go and open in Cin7, and I've got my login here, so that should work. So that's brought it all in, and you can see that it's flown.
It hasn't picked up because you had to log in.
Okay, yep. Here we go. There we go. So that's all come through now, and so you can see that there's a very good connection between the two with all of the details. All of the details, what it's sort of a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, if I go back to ApprovalMax, there's an audit report attached to every approved transaction in ApprovalMax. And so you can see here, this logs what that approval process was, what was made up on the purchase order, and you can see that the request came through. I was the one who approved it, the time and date, and everything. And so if you had a multi-step approval process, it would detail that. All right. So, Rob, did you want to show how you could then convert that into a bill?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just take back share screen. And so I'm picking up as Justin showed us, it's been approved. If you look at, one thing I'd like to highlight here is the same audit log that Justin just showed us is included as an attachment to the workflow in Cin7 Core, which is great. And if you'll set up your integration to Xero or QuickBooks to send attachments when you create the bill, this would also go over. So if you're going to pay the bill, and you would have that documentation at your fingertips. Also in your audit log, it'll show the interaction from the workflow perspective. So typically then we normally set up most clients to do receivable first. So you'd say, look, I've received those products on the back dock into my warehouse, and I've received them in. And then because I've received them in, my suppliers then hopefully supplied me with a bill. And you would basically enter the bill and copy over the line items from the purchase order. And hopefully when you've raised your purchase order, if you've been working on your price book that you've negotiated with the supplier, so hopefully they've honored the pricing that they've negotiated with you on your materials or products, and you would then copy it over. And then up here you typically put in, the bill value is 210, and you should be able to balance your 231 actually, and you should be able to balance it against that. So typically when we do a bill input, we grab the bill, fill out these four fields, and then you're validating the information against that. Now, if the purchase order was built on your right pricing, then typically the bill should align with that, with what's been received as well. And then you would approve that or authorize that, and then that would feed, you resync with Xero, and it would feed, depending on your setup in Cin7 Core, it would send the bill with the audit trail that's attached down to Xero. So then when you go into your accounts payable, you would see the supplier invoice, the attached approval documentation from ApprovalMax that says the purchase order. And as long as you control the finances here, that, okay, if that does not match the purchase order, then I need to have that discussion with my supplier and ask for a new bill, because they're billing me too much for what was negotiated. Because really the PO is the negotiation. The price on the PO is what they should be honoring. And we're trying to hold them accountable to that as suppliers. So yeah, if that's the purchase workflow with the bill being approved from our end.
Cool. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna take back sharing the screen, and we've just got a few more slides to go through. Okay, so final poll. Would you like to learn more about ApprovalMax in Cin7 Core? How Cin7 Core can enhance your workflow? Yes or not sure?
And just while it's waiting for that, the stuff you guys are doing with air wallets, with batch payments, would really go nice hand in hand with anyone using this. I think the batch payments is always a frustration for anyone. But to make that really simple, like ApprovalMax has built a lot of features in there. So, running in the conjunction with this would be very powerful for any client.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, Rob. Okay, so the vast majority of people said yes, which is fantastic. I think we've done our job here today. But basically what we recommend is, as a next step, is start your free trial today. So you could go to ApprovalMax.com and start a trial, and then just connect it up to your, it'll ask you to connect up to your Cin7 organization, and then we can help you with that further. So thank you, and now we're opening the floor to any questions people have.
I was just going to say that, Justin, to any of our existing clients that might have joined the webinar from Integration King's side, if you are interested, just email me. Happy to, do what Justin said. We'll, at our end, would fire up the ApprovalMax trial, configure it into Cin7 Core for you, and have a brief chat around setting up your approval workflows. So happy to help people out in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the real value of having a integration specialist like yourself, is to make this run as streamlined as possible and help think through any of those other things that need to be addressed as well, for such as the air wallets, as you mentioned before. Okay, all right. So just waiting for any questions. Okay, there is actually. I'll just pause. Oh, got. Okay, so Vivian Hope's got a question here to clarify. User key in PO in Cin7. ApprovalMax pulls Cin7 purchase order to ApprovalMax for approval, then Cin7 purchase order authorized, then Cin7 converts to bill. Yeah, Rob, do you want to talk to that? But that's basically
that is a correct workflow. So typically what would happen is you would have someone in your business who's your purchasing officer for buying in stock, but they may not be someone who's a line manager to approve this purchasing decision. So you might have someone, walking around the warehouse, or made some planning and modeling and says, hey, this is all the stuff I need to buy to replenish the warehouse, but they're not the person who makes the executive decision around approving it. So they would jump into ApprovalMax, create their purchase order in draft, and then save it. And then depending on your approval workflows you've set up in ApprovalMax, it would sync over to ApprovalMax, and then ApprovalMax would start to police getting that approved by, the next person up in the business. Or even it could be even the same person that you just want audit trail, that they've created the purchase order and then they've got approval, or they had that, there should be some governance around it. It then gets approved, and then the audit trail and the approval goes back into Cin7. And then you could either do the bill first and then do receivable, or you could do receivable first and then do the bill. Now, I'm always, from my background, I always say do the receivable first, then the bill, because if I haven't taken legal custody, I'm not going to pay the bill or even put the bill in. On the perspective that I've got to have taken legal custody of the stock before I put the bill in. That's just how I've normally trained and coached people with using Cin7 or any inventory platform. So, and that's kind of the workflow. And then once you finalize that whole workflow, just like normal, the bill would sync down to Xero. You would then pay it through either a normal payment function or use a batch payment function. And then when you mark it as pay, the payment would sync back to Cin7 Core, and Cin7 would show, hey, the whole workflow for the purchasing's been complete and the payment's been attached, and it's all complete and paid with the supplier, which gives you a nice overview.
I
hope that, to the end with that workflow.
Just while we're going back to step 2, I just thought I'd just show everyone what the email you get looks like for the approval. So what I showed in the demo was approving it inside the web app, and then the mobile app is very similar to that experience as well. But the third option for approving is actually just inside your inbox. So that purchase order came through to my inbox, and it's got all of the details here, and then there's a approve or a reject button as well. So that's your other option for how you can handle approvers. And then there's also, if you're using Slack, we've got a Slack integration as well, where you can see all these same details in Slack, and approve or decline as well.
Yeah, I might just add where a typical business case where this ApprovalMax workflow integration with Cin7 Core would be very powerful. So let's say in your business, you've got multiple branches, and you might have centralized the purchasing in your business for one person to sit there and plan out and buy all the stock on behalf of like 20 or 30 stores. Then what you can actually do with this is you can have that one purchasing person, doing all the modeling and loading up all these POs by store or by location. And then you can save as draft, and then that would sync over to ApprovalMax. Over to ApprovalMax, and then ApprovalMax would push that through, because you could, when Justin brought up that matrix, you could say location A is this store manager, location B is that store manager, and it would then push and drive execution of approval of those POs to those line managers or location managers, and then get it all back centrally into the system. Now, typically in Cin7's case, we'd have to have them all as being users in the system, and you pay by user. If that's the only reason you're putting them in the system as a user, ApprovalMax allows you to scale that out a bit more significantly than what you could currently, because with the Cin7 model, you'd have to pay for a user where all they're doing is literally hitting approve. So it allows you to bring more staff into the approval workflows. Because if you have to pay per user on something like Cin7, it gets pretty restrictive. You've got to find other reasons of what they're doing in the system.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And you mentioned before when we were chatting, Rob, that there's also the benefit of that you get it you can just approve via the mobile app and the email, and it's a nicer process for approving things, especially for those kind of what you might say casual users of the app, that they don't have to go deep into this fairly complex inventory system just to approve our purchase order.
Yeah, and we've had a few larger businesses CEOs who just said, look, my envision, Rob, is I have an app, which is ApprovalMax, and I just get all the things pinged to my mobile phone that I need to approve. I don't have to drill into the underlying systems because they're busy, their email's cluttered, and they know that if they had that, they could actually do right by their team and get things converted and signed off quicker. So that's where the mobile app interface really would help.
Yeah. So we have a couple more questions here. How quickly does a purchase order Cin7 take to appear in ApprovalMax? So the answer to that question is, so we sync like every hour or so. However, we have like a manual sync button. So anytime you want, that's what I did on the demo. I just synced in, as you saw, like Rob had barely entered it in, and it was in my ApprovalMax in no time at all. How many approval steps can you add into an approval workflow? As many as you like, basically. It's is as flexible, and there's very flexible, and you can have as many as you want. How does ApprovalMax help prevent fraudulent behavior? So there's a couple ways. We do detect, say, duplicate entry. Another way is that on the ApprovalMax for Xero side is we actually track we actually track something that's been approved, and if there's any changes that get made to it in Xero after it's been approved, we have the option of notifying the administrator that those changes have been made. And we also have the option of turning on that if something gets entered directly into Xero and bypasses the process, that will bring that into ApprovalMax anyway, even though it's sort of skipped the ApprovalMax process. So there's quite a bit of fraud detection in there. And then for like fraud detection, there's things like limiting, you can, when in the user roles, you can limit who can enter in a new bill, like who enter in a new supplier, sorry, and you can have an approval process for entering a new supplier. Yeah, so we have quite a fair bit of fraud detection.
I would say from our years of doing Cin7 Core builds and Xero builds, I mean, validating suppliers and making sure they're onboarded correctly is just as important as doing it with customers. So that's another thing ApprovalMax helps you take care of. There is no workflow for that at the moment inside natively in Cin7 Core or Xero. It's literally just open the screen and enter it in. There's no governance to say, have you checked all these extra details, or have you got proof that the banking is the right bank account and stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, there's many ways, and probably the biggest one of all is the fact that you do have those approval workflows, which allows for segregation of duties, and having people review things, because this is, especially once you get to the kind of business that has inventory like that level of complex of business, you you end up having unfortunately, in a lot of businesses, you have like one trusted person who ends up doing everything because the systems aren't there to separate that out, and that's potentially where internal fraud can happen. Okay, so oh, we've got another question. How would ApprovalMax be able to handle three integrations at the same time? So Cin7, Xero, and Dext. I'm happy to answer that question. So what you'll end up with is basically two ApprovalMax accounts. One which handles the purchase order workflow that we just demoed today. That's the Cin7 one. Then you're going to have a separate ApprovalMax organization for all the administrative side that connects to Xero, and that's where all of those features of ApprovalMax for Xero come into it, which is your bills, your purchase orders, your credit notes, your batch payments, your also entering in new vendors as well. That's where that's going to be handled. And to your question about Dex, Sally, is the Dext integration will flow through the ApprovalMax for Xero.
Yeah, and I could probably, because I know Sally's structure, so also because you've got different entities, you're going to have an ApprovalMax file per Cin7 file or per Xero file. But one of the benefits of that is when you've got multi-departmental businesses, like different business units, maybe in different countries or different regions, or we can actually say, okay, this ApprovalMax file is linked to this Cin7 file. Therefore, this is the approval workflow for that division. And then we go to another division, we can have a separate approval workflow. So if we were sitting ApprovalMax across three Cin7 files, it just wouldn't work because you couldn't have uniqueness in that workflow. So you would have quite a few ApprovalMax accounts, but each one would be structured differently on each business unit. So yeah, I mean, we can definitely assist with that requirement from our end.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we might be that might be all our questions for today. So we might I'll just give people like another minute just in case there's no last minute questions, but other than that we might wrap up. Thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate it. So and thank you Rob for agreeing to come on today, and for anyone who's already working with Rob, then probably best to reach out to him directly and Integration Kings directly. But for other people, feel free to go and create a trial at ApprovalMax, and my contact details were on the slides there as well. But if you create a trial, we'll get in contact with you and be able to help you further.
Yeah, thanks Justin. From our end, I'd like to say thanks on behalf of Integration Kings for inviting us along, ApprovalMax, and to do a JV on presenting on this. I think it's a good product that you built. And if any clients need help that are existing clients of us on ApprovalMax, reach out. If you're not a Cin7 Core client user, but you already use ApprovalMax, vice versa, happy to have a chat about that side if you're not using Cin7 yet.
Great. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks all.